Hi everyone, welcome to our next lesson, which is going to be covering texture, how to draw texture. This is a really fun tool that I implement in a lot of my drawings and paintings, just to keep my surfaces of the different things that I'm painting or drawing really vivid and interesting. And it's always really fun to kind of compare textures next to each other. There's just like kind of a lot of life to it. So I'm excited to share this with you. So as you can see, I set up a still life already, and I'm gonna just work with my iPad to kind of show you a little bit how to break down different textures. So even though I have 3 items, I can see about like 4 different textures within these items. I have this fuzzy fur, I have this cotton, I have this felt here, and I also have this bumpy avocado to work with. In the pincushion, I also have this like plushiness to this pincushion, but it's rather smooth. One thing to just keep in mind is when you have something smooth, like it might be under a magnifying glass a little different looking, but if it's underneath a magnifying glass and it looks almost like this, looks almost like kind of canvas. But under a magnifying glass, we could see that a little bit more. But if I'm drawing the whole still life, I'm probably not going to draw in that canvas texture. This is a little bit challenging. So if you need a magnifying glass to see the texture, then I would just, leave that out. On top of the plush pincushion, though, I do have these little tiny flowers that are making up a pattern. A pattern is different than a texture because a texture is something that we can feel with our hands, while a pattern is something that is a design, usually either man-made or maybe created by nature, that is infinite and repetitive and kind of lays on the surface of something. So you could even have like a pattern over a texture, but those are 2 different things. Although what's kind of interesting is that when you are drawing texture, you are going to be kind of thinking like rhythmically with your mark making and almost drawing a pattern repetitively with your mark making. So it's not really so much a design, but there is like a pattern to the drawing, if that makes sense. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit more too, just showing you kind of how we would go about drawing certain things here on this still life. So we can start with this cotton. This cotton is a fun one. To draw this, I think I would sort of just start with like kind of having an area where this is kind of coming out. So kind of a straight line to show like where the cotton is meeting the canvas pincushion. And then to draw this, I want to make sure that I incorporate repetition, variation, and I want to make sure that I am really looking at the outline of my texture here. So if I'm drawing this, I don't want to have like a bold outline like this, because that feels almost smooth. So I rather have the edges be fuzzy feeling like cotton. And let's see this pattern. I'm kind of like choosing a mark. This mark is sort of like a curvy sort of S mark, right? And I'm just going to repetitively, like a pattern, just keep on adding to that and building it up. I'm going to try to keep my mark making various as far as the thickness and thinness of the line that I'm applying. And it's like a slow build, like almost as if you are materializing the texture itself with the little tiny marks, bringing it to life. So even though I don't want to do this, even though I don't want that bold outline, I still am going to sort of figure out the general shape of this cotton fluff that I have here. And so instead of doing an outline, like if you feel more comfortable, like you need an outline before you start doing the mark making that is repetitive and various, you could try doing an outline in like a dotted outline sort of way, like to start like this, and then kind of materialize and create all those little textures from there. And I can show you here. Let's do that on the felt of this pincushion. So to draw this, let's just start with like this dotted outline. So I have a guide to begin with. And then with that, I'm just going to look at the different texture and then just kind of try to mimic it. Texture is tricky because, you know, there's so much to it. It's like you're looking at this mass of texture. And what you have to do is you have to improvise a little bit. Like you can't really see every single fiber of this felt, but you can sort of make it up as you go. Improvise and just mimic a little bit. So it's okay if it's not super realistic. And to make it realistic, we probably want to incorporate elements of like light and shadow. So like this side of the felt is lighter, and then this side of the felt is like a little bit is darker. And I'm going to get into how to use our charcoal in order to kind of in order to create that like light and shadow within the texture. Excuse me. All right, let's jump over to this avocado. So for this avocado, I know that it's kind of like almost pretty smooth in a way the outline of it is, which is interesting because the skin of the avocado is really bumpy, but the bumps are so subtle that it doesn't really show up too much on the outline, although it's not like totally smooth. I think it depends on the type of avocado, really. So with an avocado, we're gonna kind of like bring our light logic into this avocado and the bumps on the surface of the avocado. We can see, you know, there's like, let's look at this. There's this highlight here. There's a highlight, and then next to it is a low light or a shadow. So when we are improvising and kind of like trying to copy this texture, one thing that we can do is wherever the shadow is, we can kind of like do a little line, a little mark to show the bumps of the avocado. And the line can be sitting where the shadow of each bump is. So even though we want to like, even though that the light is coming from like this direction, the bumps are still showing shadows that are coming, that are like casting a shadow that are in a different direction. So not all of the bumps are going to have lines underneath it. Like some of these bumps might have lines kind of over here. So I'm keeping it repetitive. I'm being pretty various in my mark making. I'm never keeping it robotic and doing the same mark over and over and over again. Some textures might require that, but like an avocado would not require that because it's a pretty organic material. All right. And then, so let's talk about the intersection of textures. This is going to be really important. So you do want to avoid pretty bold outlines in this drawing, but one thing that will probably happen when you set up your still life is you're going to see how one texture intersects another texture. This is important. Just make sure to keep your edges textury and not like a thick outline, okay? And you can even make sure to bring certain textures over other textures because I'm sure you're going to have things overlapping. That's going to help this drawing really like come to life and help these different textures feel like they're existing realistically next to one another. All right, and then lastly, let's just go ahead and try to find a place. Let's see, let's draw, oops. Let's draw this fur right here. I'm gonna draw this tuft of fur for you. So once again, I'm gonna find like the general shape when I draw this, and then I'm gonna go ahead and implement the lines inside of it to create that texture. So we'll start with this outline. This can have a solid outline as opposed to an outline like this, because this shape is really sitting away from all the other green fur. It's really oriented away. It's really clear to see. So I can have a pretty bold outline to show that. And then after I create that outline, I'm just going to grab a smaller pen and just add in. Let's see, there's this fur that's like up over here, this fuzzy fur. And I can make this feel like it's really sitting underneath this green fur. This blue fur can sit underneath this green fur in a way where I can kind of like keep drawing in my marks to kind of inform a shadow that is right there. All right. So lots of repetition, variation, and just keep in mind the edges and the intersection of those textures, and you'll be good to go. So for the next part of this video, I'm just gonna probably just draw this little area right here. I'm gonna draw this area right here for you all, because there's a lot of light and shadow here, and so this is the one thing that the iPad, I'm having a hard time showing you all with like light and shadow. But with my charcoal, I'm gonna show you how to draw this area right here, kind of using my pencils and definitely drawing a lot with my eraser, so that should be fun. So the very first thing I'm gonna do that I recommend that you do too is you wanna lay down a mid-tone with your Vine charcoal first. After you do that, you want to grab that soft charcoal pencil. That's going to be great for just being able to clarify those solid lines for the outlines of that fur texture. Citing could come in handy for this too, but I definitely skipped over that for the sake of just trying to show you quick and fast how to do this. So I'm getting some more of the outlines in. I'm being quick and, using my mark making. Then I just start kind of coloring those shadows in to make the darker shapes. And eventually, as I kind of rub those into the paper, that's going to help me start with creating that volume for the fur that I want, with those little tufts standing away from the smaller tufts. These blending stubs are going to be awesome. You're going to want to definitely use these in order to get those midtones out of those really small areas. This mechanical eraser, that blue one that you just saw, is actually amazing for trying to erase out really small little details. So investing in one of those could be good, but you can also just, cut off a little sliver chunk of your eraser for that. I really start to try to see where the light is coming from, and in order to make those longer strands pop, I am switching between my soft charcoal pencil and my blending stub in order to really create this feeling of like a shadow being casted by the longer strands of fur. And just fill it in, fill it in. Lots of erasing. This is really just like a back and forth between adding that soft charcoal pencil lines down, erasing out some of the highlights. And then, it's hard to see in this video, but it's something that I wanted to mention, is that you should definitely have your medium charcoal pencil too, because that's going to be great for drawing in those lines. And it doesn't draw like straight to a dark black. They are a slow build, so that can really help with making each little tiny strand feel like it is composing this entire shape of fur. So yeah, definitely play around with those soft charcoal pencils, the medium charcoal pencils, the blending stubs, the erasers. It's really just like a continuous back and forth between all of them until you get where you want to be. Feel free to watch this and fast forward till the end. There's only like a minute or two left of me drawing out this fuzzy texture. And then at the very end of the video is a still of the texture that I did draw. I do think that it could use some work. I think I could refine it a lot more and really work on the highlights and shadows a lot more. But this is one of those things where you could just keep working and working on it and get to the point where it's almost like an illusion. So if you want to go for that and kind of create these like textural illusions, that's great. But I think that really it just wants you to have a lot of fun with mark making for this project. So just get creative for me. All right, everyone. Thanks.